Welcome to the NBAV podcast.
Welcome back to NBAV and the NBA Avenue podcast. Before we get to the recap of last night's games, I'm coming to you now on February 14th. So before we recap February 13th's games, there were 6 games that happened last night. I want to first talk about Klay Thompson. There's a lot of buzz in the NBA about Klay Thompson, and everyone's going gaga over him acknowledging, finally, that he's entering a different phase of his career. He's not the second best player on the Warriors anymore. He's not really the splash brother who's capable of being second best player on a championship team. He's not the guy who can put up, 38, 40 points in game 6 of a playoff game and then also guard the other team's best player on the other end of the floor. Those days are long behind him. But everyone's very complimentary of Klay Thompson for acknowledging that he can be like other players who were great earlier in their career and then moved on to a different phase and still found success. People are very happy with this. People are thrilled over it. But I just want to perhaps minimize the compliments a little bit, because really, what else could he do? What else could Klay Thompson really say? I mean, he's been benched in games this year. This is a realization that he had no choice but to come to. What should he have done? Should he have torpedoed his standing with the only team he's ever played with for his entire career? Should he have came out against the franchise and said that he's still Klay Thompson and they should respect him, and then get booted out of town, end up playing for Charlotte or Washington and go and just rot there like a corpse? Like, what did you expect Klay Thompson to do? This isn't Manu Ginobili when Manu was the second best player on the San Antonio Spurs behind Tim Duncan, saying, I'll go to the bench because that's the best thing for the team. This is a worse version of Klay offensively and defensively, and he's currently not one of the top 3 or 4 guys on the team. On many nights, he's just a typical bench guy. He can still have games where he puts up 26 points like last night, and he can probably still have 30-point games. It's just going to come less consistently. But I just want to point out that it's not like Klay really had a choice. If he's being rational, the only real option here is to go with what the coach was having you do anyway, which is play less minutes, which is come out at the end of certain ball games. Klay didn't have a say in this. And I also wanted to go through the Warriors roster a little bit, because the Warriors are a team where they go so up and down, and there are times where player like Kuminga, we got to trade him. And then there's times where you think this guy is one of the best prospects from his draft. And it goes so back and forth and up and down. And the Warriors have brought in so many different players over the dynasty, the championship runs, and since then. And I just wanted to go through the Warriors roster a little bit and give my thoughts on the players that they have on the team this season. So, let's do it. Let's look into Golden State Warriors roster. You have obviously Steph Curry, still what I call the greatest show in basketball. And then you have Klay Thompson on the last year of his contract, where he's making $43 million. You have Chris Paul, who hasn't been playing very much. And they're clearly holding on to him because he's going to hopefully be their main backup point guard come playoff time. You have Andrew Wiggins and Draymond Green. Right, Wiggins, now that the spotlight is off him, he's started playing a lot better. You have Draymond Green playing some of the best basketball of his career. You have Gary Payton, who I refer to as the sprinkler, because you never know where he's going to pop up on the court. And then you have Kevon Looney, who's been very, very, very quiet this season, almost surprisingly. because of how well he played in the Boston Celtics championship series and what a capable and consistent presence he was on the floor. You have Jonathan Kuminga, who's been coming on as of late. He'll be here for this season and the next. And then you have Moses Moody, who's really just totally fallen off, and it's hard to know why. What happened to him? Moody seemed like a good player. Then you have Brandon Podziemski. And he's a guy who's signed on a very team-friendly deal. He'll be here through the 2026-2027 season. And he's a guy that Warriors Nation and the media seem to really, really love. And he's not a player I can really say I'm fully on board with at this point. And I think that when Chris Paul comes back, you're going to be seeing very little Podziemski. Because where Podziemski is very concentrated, he's very in tune, he's very focused, and he does sometimes a good job on the offensive end, he's brutal on defense. Absolutely brutal. And I understand he's a 20-year-old player, but I don't see him really being this player that Warriors fans think he is. Over time, I see him falling by the wayside like Devontae Kaycock, a Quinn Cook, like a Quinn Cook. It's like you have these players who come in and out of the Warriors for short stints, and when you're watching them at the right time, you think, oh, this guy's great. This guy's going to be here for the next 5 years as a backup point guard, and it just doesn't typically end up that way. The Warriors have had a lot of players move in and out on the fringes of their playoff rotation over the last decade. And I think Podziemski is going to end up being one who isn't quite there for as long as you think he would be. Then they have Dario Saric. And he's another one of these signings where you look at it on paper at the beginning of the season and you think, oh, what a smart signing by the Warriors. But he's another one that I never really understood. He can't shoot the three. He doesn't rebound particularly well, and he doesn't defend particularly well. He tries hard, but he doesn't give you any of the things that the Warriors really need. Just being a smart player isn't really enough. You know, the Warriors had Dante DiVincenzo on their team, and he was that same type of signing, not playing the same position, obviously, but he was the same type of signing where you look at it on paper and you think, wow, what a smart signing. This is a player who is a smart ball player, but he just hasn't really popped with any other team up to this point. But on the Warriors, a smart organization that runs really good plays and has good ball movement and passing, this is where DiVincenzo is going to shine. Wasn't really the case. He didn't shine on the Warriors. He had a moment here or there in the right time, made a buzzer beater once in a blue moon. At the end of the first quarter or second quarter, he would occasionally have a good handle and impress, but for the most part, he didn't work out on the Warriors the way the Warriors wanted. Not only that, he ends up going to the New York Knicks, where he's now 10 times the player he was ever in a Warriors jersey. And I think Saric is the same way. I don't think he's really going to work out here in Golden State. Then you have Trayce Jackson-Davis, and him I really like. He's 23, but he gives you that big presence. He's a big boy. He's an athletic player, and that's something the Warriors need on this team. More athleticism. They don't necessarily need a ton more scoring, right? If you have the ball movement with Draymond and you have Curry shooting threes, which somehow it seems like he's better than ever for him even. It seems like he's shooting the ball better than ever. And you still have Klay, and you have hopefully Chris Paul coming back at some point, and you have Peyton with all of his cutting and his dunking, and you have Kuminga and Moody. Like, do you really need more scoring from Trayce Jackson-Davis? I don't think so. I think you just need his defense and his athleticism and his competitiveness. So I really like him on this Warriors team. That's just a little bit of my thoughts. So I'm not sold on Podziemski or Saric with this team, but I do like Trayce Jackson-Davis. I do. And it'll be interesting. I think the big question is, what'll Chris Paul give them when he comes back? Is he going to take away because of his lack of athleticism? I think it may come down to how consistently he's going to be able to hit the three-pointer. And that's something that Chris Paul has really improved throughout the duration of his career, where he used to be known as the mid-range guy, and he really expanded that out to the three-point line. Particularly, it became obvious during his time on the Houston Rockets, when that team had a good run and perhaps could have beaten Golden State and didn't. Came down to Game 7. But I think if Chris Paul is able to hit the three-pointer, then he's going to be sensational on this Warriors team. And if he can't, then I think his lack of athleticism is going to come back to bite them. And it might be just quite as simple as that. So anyway, there are my thoughts on the Golden State Warriors, winners of 5 in a row, trying to move from just being a play-in team to being a full-blown playoff team. We also had a couple of signings in the NBA, right? You have Dinwiddie signing with the Lakers. And he actually played his first game already. When LeBron isn't handling the basketball, there are really 3 guys who can play point guard, right? You have D'Angelo Russell, of course. You have Reeves, who handles the ball quite a lot. Yeah, I know he's not officially a point guard, but he handles the ball and he creates like a point guard. So you have Russell, Reeves, and then you have Gabe Vincent, who's injured. So what's Dinwiddie's role here, assuming that Gabe Vincent can come back? And then you have 3 guys already who can handle the ball, plus LeBron handles the ball a ton. What's Dinwiddie really going to do? The answer is he's just here for insurance. So often we look at these NBA signings and trades and we think, oh, he sucks. What are they doing bringing him in? This isn't Dinwiddie from 7 years ago, who was having a great season with the Brooklyn Nets. This is Dinwiddie, who was having one of the worst seasons of his career. And you think, what are they doing? What are the Lakers gaining from bringing Dinwiddie in? You look at the Mavericks and you think, what are they doing bringing in Gafford and PJ Washington? Specifically PJ Washington, like what has this guy done versus, what the Mavericks gave up to bring them in? But you have to look and think, not how good is this player, but how good is this player for the role that he's going to be playing on this new destination? What role do they need? Yeah, I don't want Dinwiddie to be the starting point guard of the Los Angeles Lakers, but that's really not what they're bringing him in to do. They're bringing him in because Gabe Vincent hasn't played the entire season. He's not being brought in to start. You have D'Angelo Russell, and then you have Austin Reeves, who can also give you those minutes, and then you have LeBron, who can just play point guard for 5-6 minute stretches of the game. Dinwiddie is just there in case Vincent never comes back, or if Vincent does come back, and for whatever reason you need some insurance in the playoffs. He is a guy who has a lot of playoff experience. He is a guy where on the right day handled the ball in fourth quarter of playoff games and made good positive plays for the Mavericks a couple seasons ago. I'll bring you another example. The Celtics brought in Porzingis, and any Knicks fan will tell you that Porzingis is horrible. And Porzingis has also been on the Mavericks too, and he wasn't very good. And Porzingis was also on Washington, and he wasn't very good. But when you think about how little Boston needs from Porzingis, for that role, he far exceeds what Boston is expecting of him. Suddenly, Porzingis goes from a career massive bust, who's overpaid, to being amazing. Because what did you really need from him? All that he's asked to do is not be the best player on the team, not the second best, not the third best. He's asked to try and block shots, shoot open corner threes, and make an occasional basket in the post. And for that, he's exceeding expectations. He's suddenly gone from doing less, underperforming for his entire career, and now he's overperforming. Because for what they need, he's able to easily outperform that role. I'll give you another example. Andrew Wiggins. Massive bust with one of the top draft picks, right? In Minnesota, his whole career. He goes over to Golden State with his massive, massive contract. And what happens? Suddenly, the Golden State Warriors don't need him to be the best player or second best player on the team. You have Steph and Klay and Draymond. And he's able to hone in on his defensive capabilities, and suddenly he outperforms the role of being the fourth best guy on the team. When he needed to be the best or second best player on the team, he wasn't that at all. But you change the role that you're putting him into, and suddenly he outperforms all the expectations for him. And by the end of the season, some people are saying he was the best, second best player on that title team, and they might be right for what he did on both ends of the floor in that championship series against Boston. So connecting it back to the original point, look at the role. Dinwiddie can come in and play behind Vincent or when someone else is hurt, and he can create for a few possessions in the playoffs. He's done that before, and that's all they need from him. And best case scenario, he'll just be a bench player, right? If all of the players on Los Angeles, if Vincent comes back and plays well and can hit the three-pointer, and Reeves is playing well and Russell is playing well, then Dinwiddie doesn't even really need to play. He'll just be a bench warmer. But worst case scenario, guys get hurt, Dinwiddie can come in and give you a couple of minutes in the playoffs. That's all they need. We also had another move. We had Thaddeus Young to the Suns, and I like this move. Thad Young is an NBA player. Some of the previous talent that the Phoenix Suns had weren't really NBA caliber. Thad Young is. He's insurance to have in the playoffs. Frankly, I wouldn't hate if the Phoenix Suns had brought Tony Snell to this team. He's one team that I think actually made sense because he's a streaky three-point shooter and a long defender. Where you're relying on guys like Josh Okogie, Nasir Little, right? It wouldn't hurt. Previously, they were relying on Keita Bates-Diop. It wouldn't hurt to have a guy like Tony Snell, who on the right night can hit a bunch of open three-pointers, which they will get. Ask any of the role players on the Phoenix Suns, watch any one of their games. If you're a role player, you're going to get open corner threes or open wing threes as a part of this Suns team when you have Beal, Booker, and Durant. So I like the move, Thad Young to the Suns. Good insurance for them. Another point that I wanted to talk about is sometimes as NBA fans and fans and media alike, we get a narrative in our head and then we run with it and it becomes a story. But it really wasn't a story. It was just purely a media narrative started by the media and then it perpetuated and became a story. But what was the origin? It wasn't really from a team. It was just from the media. I'll give you an example. All of the talk before the trade deadline about Oklahoma City needing a big man and wanting to bring in another big man to play behind Chet, who leaves what to be desired in terms of being a big man on the defensive end, where, yeah, he could block shots, but in the wrong matchup, he can get bullied because he doesn't have much weight behind him. That wasn't something that the Oklahoma City Thunder ever said. OKC, their coaching, their owners, they never said or suggested that they were interested in bringing in a big man to play behind Chet or to play alongside Chet. This was something that Bill Simmons and the Ringer media and other media arrived at because when you look at Chet play and you see that he could benefit from having a big guy next to him, a guy who has more meat on the bone, using our imaginations, we think, it would be really cool if they made a move and brought in somebody to play alongside Chet, another big man. But it wasn't something that Oklahoma City ever said. So here we are before the trade deadline, going back a week or so, thinking to ourselves, when are the Oklahoma City Thunder going to make this type of trade? And what does Oklahoma City end up doing? They send out Micic, and they send out Trey Mann, and they bring in Gordon Hayward. No center, no big man. Because that wasn't something they ever wanted to do. It was just a narrative that we ran with, which we created. I don't mean me personally, but the media around the league. Because as basketball fans and as people who cover the sport, we looked at the team and we said this is what they need, so we created trades. It was all fiction. And I think there's another piece of fiction which I want to debunk. And that is another thing which Bill Simmons talks about all the time, and I don't think it's really true, and that is continuity of stars on NBA teams. And that players don't play like Dirk Nowitzki anymore, right? They don't stick with one team for their entire careers. And I don't think it's really true, and let me show you why. Look at the Boston Celtics. Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been on that team since the start of their careers. There's no signs of them going anywhere. They both have massive contracts with this team. Look at the Milwaukee Bucks. Giannis has been there his entire career. Middleton as well. Both of these guys are Milwaukee, bred and born. Where else have they gone? Nowhere. Look at the 76ers. They drafted Joel Embiid. Yeah, they don't have Ben Simmons anymore, but nobody can blame them for that. Ben Simmons tanked his career. He wouldn't play. Joel Embiid, their best player, has been there since the start of his career with no signs of him going anywhere at any time. Go to the Indiana Pacers. They got Tyrese Halliburton in a trade, but Tyrese wasn't a big-ticket item at the time that they traded for him. Now that Tyrese has morphed into one of the best players in the league, one of the best point guards in the league, he's not going to go anywhere. He's going to be on that team for the next who knows how many years. Move on to Orlando. Paolo Banchero, he's going to be part of that team for the next decade. Go to Atlanta, Trae Young. He's only played for Atlanta. There's plenty of teams if you go throughout the league. Yeah, not every single team is going to have one of the top players in the NBA who's going to stay there for the entire duration of his career like Nowitzki. I understand that. But there have always been NBA trades, and there's always been trades of top talent. Shaq got traded, right? Michael Jordan came back eventually as a Washington Wizard. It's the same thing today. Not every star is going to stay with his team for his entire career, but a lot of them do. Or at least a lot of them do for vast majorities of their career. I just brought you 8 examples. The Hornets have LaMelo Ball right now because they view him as being their star player. The only reason they would ever get rid of him is if he doesn't live up to expectations. But if he does, if he is the player that they want him to be, he'll be there for another 10 years. In Detroit right now, you have Cade Cunningham and Jaden Ivey. One of those guys is going to be on this team for a very, very long time. Move over to the Western Conference. Karl Anthony Towns, despite everything you want to say about him, despite everything, all the negativity surrounding him, he's still only played for the Timberwolves his whole career. And Anthony Edwards is certainly going to be there for the next who knows how many years. When Shai Gilgeous-Alexander came to the Thunder, he was a part of the Paul George trade, and he was a nice piece, but he wasn't the MVP caliber Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that we know now. And now he signed a huge contract to stay with Oklahoma City, and he's going to be there forever. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray in Denver. Devin Booker on the Phoenix Suns. He's been a Sun for life. Luka Doncic on Dallas. He's going nowhere. De'Aaron Fox on Sacramento. And then move to the most obvious one, where the Golden State Warriors have had Steph, Klay, and Draymond. All of them from rookies to present-day NBA champion, 4-time NBA champions. The Memphis Grizzlies have Ja. He's not going anywhere. Desmond Bane's not going anywhere. Unless Ja gets himself kicked out of the NBA, he's going to be on the Grizzlies from now until till the end of the universe. The Trailblazers tried their best to keep Damian Lillard as long as humanly possible, except their organization is such trash that they eventually had to trade him because Dame is coming up the sunset of his career and he wants to win a title. He didn't move teams due to lack of continuity and today's stars wanting to move out and have control over their careers. Yeah, maybe a little bit. But nobody blames him for that. This isn't because today is different than 20 years ago. It's just because their franchise is so bad and they couldn't win, so eventually they made a move. And Wembanyama is going to be a Spur for the next decade, at least. So, I mean, how many examples did I just bring right there of players who are staying with teams and who have continuity? And we could even bring up more examples, and we can quibble over whether it's really due to today's NBA or not. But a lot of the guys who get moved are guys who are just more in the latter half of their NBA career, and they're trying to win a championship. But there are plenty of players who get drafted by one team and stay there for 10, 15 years. There are plenty of guys like that, and we just went through it. So that's another myth about today's NBA that I wanted to debunk. Now let's take a look at the actual games that we had last night in the NBA. So through the 6 games that we had the Celtics going against the Nets in Brooklyn in the first of their back-to-back, and they're going to play the Nets again tonight. So the Celtics won last night, and they'll probably win again tonight on their home court. The Thunder beat the Magic. The Thunder stay as consistent as ever. They're still 1 game back from the Timberwolves in the Western Conference. 127-113 win. Gilgeous-Alexander and Jalen Williams doing their business. Then you have the Miami Heat destroying Milwaukee. 123-97. What you had here was a Milwaukee squad that is the veteran team, right? They were the veteran team, considering that Miami didn't even have Jimmy Butler on the court. They were playing Nikola Jovic. He played 30 minutes and scored 24 points. Caleb Martin played 25 minutes. Tyler Hero played 30. Duncan Robinson played 26. Jaime Jaquez, the other rookie, played 28. Haywood Highsmith played 23. The Heat were throwing out the young squad, but yet the Heat looked like the veteran team, and the Bucks looked like the team that hadn't practiced on the defensive end. Milwaukee looked pedestrian and awkward. If you would have swapped the organizations and coaches last night, so move Doc Rivers over to the Miami Heat side, and move Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley and all of the coaching staff there to the Milwaukee side, Milwaukee would have won by 40. When you look at the talent on these rosters, you had a guy, Nikola Jovic, playing last night's game, and he was able to just walk up to his spots. He was smiling. He was calm. He was having a great time out there. Because Milwaukee didn't do anything to make any of the Heat players uncomfortable. They were giving wide-open three-pointers to Kevin Love. The amount of wide-open threes that the Miami Heat got in that game is... Milwaukee should be ashamed of themselves. Milwaukee's kind of reminding me of what the Philadelphia Eagles did this last season in the NFL, where they're coming off a season where they went 15-1, then they start off this season like 10-1, and suddenly they can't win a game. They just became a terrible team overnight. They fall into the playoffs and they lose to the Bucks. They lose to the Buccaneers. What happened? How does a team go from being virtually undefeated to being the worst team in the league overnight? And that's kind of what happened here with the Milwaukee Bucks. What happened to them? You have a championship roster with one of the top 3 players in the NBA on your team in Giannis, and then another top 15, 20 guy in Damian Lillard. What the heck is going on? Why can't they get something rolling? They make minor trades to try and fill out the roster. What's going on with them? They still have Brook Lopez to defend inside. He's supposed to be a good three-point shooter. What in the world is happening? I don't think they're going to figure it out anytime soon. They're going to have to take the All-Star break. They're going to have to try and hope that they get a run going after the All-Star break. But for now, it's this bewildering team that just fell off overnight, and nobody can figure it out. If you look at them in their last 10 games, what's their record? Milwaukee in the last 10 games, they're 4-6. They're a below 500 team. How's that possible? Very, very hard to understand. Let's move on to some of the other games we had, which were we then had the Kings go against the Phoenix Suns. And the Kings and Suns seem to play these really amazing games against each other. The last time the Kings and Suns played each other, the Suns came back by like 23 points down in the fourth quarter and won the game with some super late game heroics from Kevin Durant. And there was another great game tonight. What was really helpful for the Phoenix Suns is that they got a lot of production, not just from their main guys. And they played this game virtually without Bradley Beal. Bradley Beal only played 5 minutes and had 5 points in the game. But they got some really great production from Eric Gordon, who on most nights is a zombie out there. He doesn't do anything. He goes up and down the court, doesn't really score points, doesn't really notch assists, barely rebounds. But on this night, he scored 23 points, and that's something that he's going to do 1 out of every 8 games, 1 out of every 10 nights for this team. Last night, they got that. And they also had a couple of timely corner threes from Josh Okogie. They had a timely 3 from Nasir Little. And they had some really big 3-pointers and some great baskets late in the fourth quarter from Royce O'Neal, who brought exactly what they were looking for when they got him over from Brooklyn, which is a player who can play on the court in the fourth quarter in crunch time, make timely hoops, like he's done it before. That was exactly what Royce O'Neal did. He didn't shoot very much. He only scored 9 points, but it all came in the fourth quarter. He also had five assists, 4 rebounds. And give some massive credit to Josh Okogie, because when the game was on the line, literally at the foul line, at the end of the game with the Phoenix Suns up by 3, the Suns missed a foul shot, and Okogie tipped the ball up in the air with incredible hustle, and it ended up getting rebounded. The Suns ended up rebounding the ball, but with Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen might get the credit for the rebound, but it was really Josh Okogie who tipped the ball up in the air and made that possible. And then the Sacramento Kings couldn't get their final possession, and the Suns won the game. Could have been a little bit more drama. You could have had a De'Aaron Fox or a Malik Monk 3-pointer that sends that game into overtime. But they avoided that with the great hustle from Josh Okogie and Grayson Allen. Grayson Allen also having a fantastic season. He scored another 19 points last night. And you had a monster Sabonis game, and I want to explain why. Because for a large chunk of the fourth quarter, Nurkic wasn't in the game. And when Nurkic isn't in the game for the Suns, they had absolutely nobody to defend Sabonis. He was being defended by Okogie on some possessions. He was being defended by Nasir Little on some possessions, and it wasn't a contest. They had no chance against Sabonis. And that's really the problem with the Phoenix Suns. Their main issue as a team is big man rebounding. Drew Eubanks has not gotten it done. He played 6 minutes last night. None of the players who they had previously, Metu, didn't get it done. He's gone. Bol doesn't get it done from that perspective. The rebounding and defense. Nurkic gets it done somewhat, but he really struggles at times in the rebounding department. He had 9 rebounds last night. They need some help in that department. They need help in the rebounding, and they need help in the defense. So don't look at the game and tell me, oh yeah, Sabonis is unbelievable. I'm not a Sabonis guy. Because I believe that the Sacramento Kings are their best when Fox and Monk are moving up and down the court quick. And yes, Sabonis had a great game, but also look at who is defending him. And when you watch what Malik Monk does for this Sacramento team, oh my gosh, they are going to be missing him if he's not on this team next season. If they don't find a way to re-sign him, Sacramento's going to have to find a way to get rid of Harrison Barnes in the offseason because they need desperately to bring back Malik Monk. In the remaining games, we had the Timberwolves beating the Trailblazers, as everyone expected they should. And then you have the Lakers beating the Pistons in a game where the Lakers were ahead the entire time. Moving on to tonight's games, it's a massive slate of NBA games. It's as big of a slate of NBA games you could possibly have. You have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 13 games going on tonight. That's almost the entire league. only 4 teams aren't playing tonight. We'll start you off with a Hawks-Hornets matchup where the Hawks lost their last one. The Hornets won their last 2. We're going to see what the dazzling Micic can bring in this game in Charlotte where the Hornets are playing their best basketball of the season. You have the Miami Heat coming off of a victory without Jimmy Butler, and they're going to go play the 76ers, who managed to win their last ball game. So the 76ers is going to try to see if they can string 2 in a row here against the Miami Heat. But with the Miami Heat, Miami Heat could look great, and the Miami Heat could look terrible. It's just been that kind of inconsistent season for them. But currently, Miami is in the 7th seed, so they moved into a tie with Orlando. Right, Orlando losing to Oklahoma City last night, and the Heat beating Milwaukee. Now the Miami Heat are in that tied position with Orlando for 7, and they're looking to move up. So Miami in 7, is this the time where they finally wake up and they start stringing together a couple of victories? It's a great opportunity against the Sixers without Embiid tonight. Then you have the Knicks going against the Orlando Magic. The Knicks have been on the end of 3 straight losses, including an absolutely brutal one in their last one, where the referees straight up took away overtime from them in the worst call of the season, a foul call on Jalen Brunson. And Brunson was all class. Immediately after the game, Brunson goes and he hugs it out with Dillon Brooks, probably the last guy you'd ever want to hug it out with at the end of a game where you just got screwed. He's classy, doesn't blame anyone, he's quiet, and he's going to be back tonight. Knicks are really looking to get back on track with a win, and it'll be tough. Orlando's a good team, but they'll be back at the Garden. They'll be in Orlando, so even worse. They'll be in Orlando, and we'll see what happens. It should be a competitive matchup between these two pretty consistent teams. You have the Nets, who are going to go lose back-to-back to the Celtics tonight in Boston Garden. You have the Bulls, who are going against the Cavaliers. The Bulls won their last one. The Cavaliers finally lost a game. And we'll see what happens. Will the Cavaliers lose a couple games in a row heading into the All-Star break, or will they get immediately back on track? We'll see what happens with this 2 seed going against the Chicago Bulls. You have the Indiana Pacers going against the Raptors. Raptors just lost a really horrible game to the Spurs, so look for the Pacers to continue that. Look for the Pacers who also lost their last game, so you're going to two teams who had uncharacteristically bad nights. We'll see what happens in this one. Tough game to predict. Washington Wizards going against the Pelicans. The Pelicans have had a super forgiving schedule right now, and look for them to win another game here at home and stay in the hunt and near the top of the Western Conference. The Rockets are going to go face the Grizzlies again. Look for the Rockets to win that game. We'll see if Gigi Jackson is able to suit up tonight for the Grizzlies. If he's not, it's virtually a guaranteed loss for Memphis. Then you have the Spurs coming off of finally a victory against the Raptors, and they're going to go face the Mavericks, but I expect the Mavericks to win because the Mavericks have won a couple in a row since the trade deadline, and they're looking to stay hot with their new players in P.J. Washington and Daniel Gafford. The Pistons lost last night to the Lakers, and they're going to go face the Suns in Phoenix, where the Suns are very, very good, especially in the fourth quarter. The Suns should handle business tonight against the Pistons. Then you have the Lakers going against the Jazz. Jazz have been bad since the trade deadline and since they got rid of Olynyk and Agbaji and Fontecchio. So look for the Lakers to take advantage of the opportune timing and beat the Jazz in Utah tonight. Then you have the Sacramento Kings. They lost last night to the Suns, and they're going to continue a tough back-to-back. They're going to Denver. But Denver's looked really bad lately. They've got blown out twice, once by Oklahoma City, and then they got blown out by... Who else did Denver get blown? They got blown out by Milwaukee, I believe. So now the Sacramento Kings are going to go to Denver. Denver tries to get on track. It should be a really good game. And then you have the Clippers going against the Warriors. Warriors have won 5 in a row, so this should be fantastic. This should be really, really good. The Clippers lost their last one. They haven't done much of that over the last 35 games, so we'll see. The Clippers are going to bring it tonight. Clippers-Warriors, this is the marquee matchup. It's the one everyone's looking forward to. That just about does it for us here on NBAV. Follow us on social at NBAV and NBA Avenue. Reach out to the show with emails and questions and comments to NBAVENUE. That's NB Avenue. Also spells like NBA Venue at yahoo.com. We are your source for a great time every time. And until next time, we are out.